The planet's surface was a shattered landscape of ash, twisted metal, and broken structures. Fires burned in patches across the horizon, casting long, flickering shadows over the battlefield. The air was thick with smoke, the smell of burned ozone and alien chemicals stinging the lungs. It had been hours since the first wave of the attack, yet the devastation remained, as if the world itself mourned. Among the chaos, figures moved cautiously, either scavengers looking for supplies or survivors clinging to life. Jason Hale scanned the area with a trained eye. His boots crunched over debris as he advanced carefully. The mission had been simple at first: scout for survivors and report back. But as he approached the ruins of a collapsed structure, he noticed something unusual: a faint energy signature, weak but distinct. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Most humans would have ignored it, assuming it was residual energy from the attack, but Jason had trained for situations like this. He crouched behind a metal beam, observing. The signature grew clearer as he moved closer. Beneath a heavy slab of debris, he saw her. She was small, at least compared to the towering alien soldiers he had seen in reports, but her presence was undeniable. Her body was bruised, torn in places, and her skin shimmered with a strange bioluminescence that dimmed with each shallow breath. Her limbs were folded unnaturally under the weight of the rubble, and her eyes, glowing faintly, darted nervously. "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you," Jason whispered, though he doubted she could understand him. Still, he knew some species could sense intent. He moved slowly, removing debris bit by bit, careful not to make sudden movements. The alien stirred slightly, a faint hiss escaping her throat, but she didn't flee. That alone was a good sign. When the last piece of rubble was cleared, Jason reached out, his hand steady. "You're safe now. I'll help you." He lifted her gently, noting how fragile she felt. Her body was lighter than a human's, but there was a strange resilience to her frame. As he carried her to a relatively safe spot, he noticed her breathing was uneven, her glowing heart flickering like a dying star. Once they reached a small crater formed by a collapsed building, Jason set her down carefully. He unpacked his survival kit, pulling out medical supplies. He knew alien biology well enough to handle basic injuries, and he had trained for cross-species emergencies. Cleaning the worst of the wounds, he applied a combination of antiseptic and a gel that could help stabilize tissue. "You'll be okay," he murmured, though he wasn't entirely sure. She flinched at his touch, instinctive fear flickering in her eyes. Jason remained calm, speaking softly, letting her sense that he meant no harm. Slowly, she relaxed, her breathing evening out. Night approached quickly, turning the battlefield into a landscape of shadows and flickering fires. Jason built a makeshift shelter using metal fragments and pieces of alien tech he found nearby. He covered it with thermal sheets to retain warmth, knowing the temperature would drop drastically. He lit a small fire, careful to keep it contained, and sat beside her, keeping watch. Despite the exhaustion, Jason found himself observing her closely. She was unlike any alien he had encountered. Her limbs had a fluid grace, her skin shimmered with subtle colors depending on her mood, and her eyes, large, luminous, and filled with intelligence, watched him as if trying to understand his every thought. He realized she was communicating, but not in words. Her body emitted soft energy pulses, subtle shifts that carried meaning he could only partially grasp. "You're safe," he said again, repeating it like a mantra. "No one else is going to hurt you tonight." She tilted her head slightly, a gesture that felt almost like acknowledgement. Jason interpreted it as trust. The night was long. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, creatures scavenging the ruins, their cries sharp and alien. Jason remained alert, his hand resting near his sidearm, though he had no intention of firing unless necessary. Every so often she stirred, and he adjusted her position, ensuring she remained comfortable. As the hours passed, Jason began to mimic her gestures, subtly moving his hands in ways that mirrored her energy pulses. To his surprise, she responded, matching the movements in small, deliberate ways. This was remarkable, an unspoken dialogue forming between them. He realized then that trust was being built not through language, but through patience, empathy, and careful observation. By the early hours, she had relaxed completely, allowing him to lean back against a piece of debris and rest for a moment. Jason's thoughts wandered. He had been in dangerous situations before, faced death multiple times, but this was different. Saving her felt personal, as if humanity itself was being judged by his actions. Every life he had saved as a human soldier had mattered, but none had carried this weight of moral responsibility toward a species entirely alien to him. Morning light began to pierce through the smoke, painting the battlefield in hues of orange and red. Jason knew they could not stay in the crater. The alien mother needed proper care, and staying here would expose them both to scavengers and remaining hostile forces. He lifted her carefully, supporting her fragile body as they began to move toward a distant hill where he had spotted structures that might provide temporary shelter. The journey was slow and arduous. Her wounds, though stabilized, caused her to stumble. Jason held her firmly, guiding her with gentle but firm pressure. At one point she froze, her body tensing, and Jason realized a predator was nearby. He scanned the surroundings, spotting a pack of scavenger creatures, their forms twisted and insect-like, moving toward them. With calm precision, he drew his weapon and fired warning shots. The creatures hesitated, sensing danger, and then retreated into the smoke. "See, you're safe," he said, his voice steady. She pulsed lightly in response, almost like a sigh of relief. Jason smiled faintly. Their communication was rudimentary, yet it worked. They rested intermittently, using large pieces of debris as makeshift cover. Jason shared small details about himself, speaking aloud, not expecting her to understand, but believing that tone and intent carried weight. "I've been to other worlds," he said. "I've seen war, but I've never seen someone left behind like this. You're not alone anymore." She responded with a faint shimmer of energy, almost like a nod. As they neared the hill, Jason noticed a small creek trickling through the rocks. He paused, allowing her to drink and regain strength. Her movements were cautious, but she followed his guidance, dipping her hands into the water carefully. For a moment they both rested, the only sounds being the soft gurgle of water and distant echoes of destruction. Jason looked at her and realized that despite the chaos and danger surrounding them, a bond was forming. It was fragile, unspoken, and extraordinary. Humanity's greatest strength, he thought, was not weapons or technology, but compassion, courage, and the willingness to help even when there was no reward. Night approached again, and Jason knew they would need to find more secure shelter soon. He scouted ahead, spotting a half-intact structure partially buried in debris. Carefully, he guided her inside. The interior was dark but sheltered from wind and scavengers. Jason set up his thermal sheets, tending again to her wounds, making her as comfortable as possible. She watched him with unblinking eyes, and Jason felt the weight of her gratitude, even though it was silent. In the quiet moments, he thought about the species' history, the colony that had been destroyed, and how easily compassion could bridge gaps between entirely different forms of life. For hours they remained like that, Jason tending, observing, guarding, and her resting, absorbing warmth and safety. He began to feel a strange kinship, a sense of purpose that transcended the battlefield. He was no longer just a soldier or scout. He was a bridge between worlds, proving that humanity's courage and empathy mattered even in places where survival was uncertain. As dawn broke once more, Jason knew that their journey was only beginning. The alien mother's survival depended on him, but he realized that this was more than a simple act of mercy. It was a testament to what humans could offer the universe. Not dominance, not conquest, but the ability to care, to act bravely, and to extend trust when no one else would. And as he prepared to lead her further toward safety, Jason knew that the story of this night, of her survival and their bond, would not be forgotten. Even if the galaxy was vast and indifferent, moments like these proved that humanity could shine brightly, like a beacon of hope in the darkest corners of space. Together, human and alien, they moved forward into uncertainty. Danger awaited, but so did understanding, compassion, and the chance to redefine what it meant to be strong, not through force alone, but through courage, empathy, and the willingness to help when no one else would. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a pale light across the scarred landscape. Jason Hale helped Lyrana up from their makeshift shelter, supporting her fragile frame as they prepared to move again. She was stronger now than the night before, her breathing steadier, and her glowing heart pulsing with renewed energy. Though she could not speak in human language, her subtle energy pulses communicated gratitude, fear, and cautious trust. They began their journey toward the distant alien settlement Jason had spotted earlier. It was a long trek across terrain torn apart by the recent battle, littered with jagged metal, craters, and fallen structures. Despite the obstacles, Jason's determination never wavered. Every step he took was measured, ensuring that Lyrana could keep pace without risking further injury. The first challenge came quickly. A wide crevice, its edges unstable, stretched across their path. Jason examined it, assessing the risk. "We can do this," he said softly, more to reassure himself than Lyrana. He scouted a narrow ledge along the side, testing each step before guiding her across. She followed cautiously, her trust in him growing with each movement. Her delicate hand occasionally brushed against his arm, a silent acknowledgement of his help. Once across, they paused. Lyrana sank to the ground, her limbs trembling from the exertion. Jason knelt beside her, offering water from his canteen. She drank cautiously, then looked up at him with wide, luminous eyes. He smiled, a small gesture but one filled with encouragement. "You're doing well," he said. "We're not far now." Their progress was slow but steady. Along the way, Jason observed more of Lyrana's abilities. When a small pack of scavenger creatures approached, she instinctively emitted a subtle pulse of energy. The creatures froze, sensing danger, and then retreated into the shadows. Jason marveled at the combination of her instinct and intelligence. She was not defenseless, but she needed guidance, and he was determined to provide it. As midday approached, the terrain became more treacherous. A steep slope loomed ahead, littered with unstable debris and sharp edges. Jason knew they would need to move carefully. "We take it slow," he instructed, "one step at a time." He led the way, testing every foothold and handhold. Lyrana mirrored his movements, her energy pulses growing stronger and more confident as she learned to trust his guidance. Halfway up the slope, danger struck. A group of hostile aliens appeared from the ridge above, their armor glinting in the sunlight. They had survived the ambush and were hunting for any remaining survivors. Jason's pulse quickened, but he remained calm. He positioned himself between Lyrana and the attackers, signaling her to stay behind him. The first of the hostile aliens charged. Jason dodged with precise timing, firing his weapon to disable, not kill, as he knew lethal force might trigger further aggression. He moved with tactical precision, guiding Lyrana behind cover while keeping the attackers off balance. She responded instinctively, emitting defensive energy pulses that disrupted their coordination. Together they made an unlikely team, human strategy and alien instinct working in harmony. After what felt like hours, though in reality was only minutes, the hostile aliens retreated, unwilling to risk further conflict. Jason exhaled, feeling the tension in his body ease slightly. Lyrana pulsed softly, a sign of relief. He offered her a reassuring smile. "See, we can handle this together." Her luminous eyes blinked slowly, and her hand brushed lightly against his arm, a gesture he understood as gratitude. They pressed on, eventually reaching a shallow valley with scattered ruins. Here, Jason spotted remnants of the alien settlement in the distance, a cluster of partially intact buildings, smoke rising from chimneys and signs of life. Hope surged in his chest. "We're almost there," he said. Lyrana's energy pulses grew faster, almost like excitement. She understood the concept of safety and aid, even without words. The final stretch was not without danger. Scavenger creatures lurked among the ruins, drawn by movement and the faint scent of life. Jason moved quickly and quietly, instructing Lyrana to follow his lead. When a creature leapt from the shadows, Jason acted instantly, using a combination of tactical skill and precise weapon handling to drive it away. Lyrana, though still weak, responded with a subtle energy pulse that disoriented other creatures nearby. Together, they reached the outer perimeter of the settlement without injury. The gates were guarded by members of Lyrana's species. At first, they regarded Jason with suspicion. Humans were rare in this region, and they had likely heard of previous conflicts between species. He raised his hands in a universal gesture of peace and guided Lyrana forward, demonstrating her survival and his role in helping her. The guards hesitated, but allowed them entry after a tense moment of assessment. Inside the settlement, medics rushed to Lyrana's side. Jason stepped back, observing quietly as they tended to her wounds with advanced alien technology. Her breathing eased, her glowing heart pulsing steadily now, a clear sign of recovery. She looked at Jason with eyes full of emotion, her energy pulses radiating relief and gratitude. He knelt beside her briefly, offering a reassuring hand. She responded with a gentle touch of her own, the bond between them deepening. Over the next few days, Jason stayed in the settlement, helping with recovery efforts and learning about the culture of Lyrana's people. He observed their social structure, the importance of family and survival, and the challenges they faced after the ambush. Lyrana, now fully conscious and more mobile, remained close to him. Her species' language was complex, but he learned to understand basic energy signals and gestures, creating a rudimentary communication system. The alien mother and the human became inseparable during this time. Lyrana would often pulse in patterns that conveyed curiosity, questions, and even humor. Jason responded with gestures, tone, and small demonstrations, slowly building a bridge between species. Other members of her colony observed this interaction with awe. Humans, they realized, were capable of empathy, courage, and intelligence in ways that went beyond survival or warfare. One morning, as Jason prepared to leave the settlement, the leaders of Lyrana's colony approached him. They had come to recognize his efforts, his bravery, and the care he had shown to one of their most vulnerable members. "Your species has strength," one of them said, through translation devices. "Not in weapons, but in spirit. You have saved one of us when all others abandoned her." Jason nodded, feeling a sense of pride, not in himself, but in humanity. "I did what anyone should have done," he replied simply. "No one should be left behind." Lyrana's pulse surged brightly at this, a sign of agreement and gratitude. As he prepared to depart, Lyrana moved closer, resting a hand on his arm. Her energy pulsed steadily, more intense than before. It was not a language he could fully interpret, but the meaning was clear. She trusted him, she appreciated him, and she would never forget his actions. Jason smiled faintly, patting her hand. "I'll be back," he said softly. The journey back to his ship was quiet, filled with reflection. Jason thought about the events that had unfolded, the dangers they had faced, and the bond he had formed with Lyrana. He realized that humanity's greatest value was not measured in power or conquest, but in the ability to act with courage, compassion, and understanding across the vastness of space. Upon reaching the edge of the settlement, Jason paused for one last look at Lyrana. She stood among her people now, strong, confident, and alive. The colony had a second chance because a human had chosen to care. The thought filled him with a deep sense of purpose. Humanity, he realized, had the power to touch lives and change destinies, even in worlds far beyond their own. As Jason ascended to his ship, leaving the planet's surface behind, he felt a connection that transcended distance and species. Lyrana's energy pulses echoed in his mind, a reminder that empathy, bravery, and determination could create bonds that nothing in the universe could break. From that day forward, the story of the human who saved the alien mother spread quietly throughout the settlement. Lyrana shared her experiences with her people, and though Jason was gone, his actions left an indelible mark. They spoke of his courage, his compassion, and his willingness to help when all others had turned away. Jason, returning to human space, carried the memory with him. The universe was vast, dangerous, and often indifferent, but he had proven that even in the darkest corners, humanity could shine brightly. He knew that one act of courage, one choice to help, could ripple across worlds, changing lives in ways no one could predict. And somewhere on that distant planet, Lyrana thrived, surrounded by her people, her heart glowing steadily, a silent testament to the human who chose to help when no one else would. The bond they had formed, unspoken yet profound, was a reminder that the essence of humanity, its bravery, empathy, and moral strength, was a force that could leave a lasting impact, even among the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and dangers alike, but in that small act of compassion, Jason had shown that humans could be more than survivors. They could be protectors, allies, and beacons of hope for those who had been abandoned, forgotten, or left for dead. And in the quiet of the night, as he looked out into the endless expanse of space, Jason knew that wherever life was in need, wherever courage was required, humanity would answer the call. The story of a human and an alien mother, of survival, trust, and compassion, would echo across worlds. It would remind everyone that the greatest power was not in weapons, not in conquest, but in the choice to care, to act bravely, and to help when no one else would.